So at the end of the last video, I made mention of all those piccolo toms that I had bought, and of course kind of left it open-ended as to what became of them. Well, I had a plan for these things for a long time, and I'm very, very happy with what became of those toms. Now I'm willing to bet that some of you already got there before I did, but this is what I did with all of those piccolo toms, and with a lot of cast-off shells from Project 303. So let's go through the kit sizes real quick. We've got 4x6 piccolo tom / concert tom, 5x6, 6x8, and 7x11 inch rack toms, 12x14 floor tom, a 16x18 floor tom, a 16x22 bass tom. It's not really a gong drum because the head doesn't overhang the shell. And then an 18x24 inch kick drum. And then the snare of the day here is my 7x13 Collector Series DW, which, even though it's ruby glass, blends in well with the red pearl that I chose for this kit. Rather than try and wrap up some bass drum hoops to match the kit, because I find that boring, I decided to go with piano white lacquer hoops. And part of this was inspired by my mistaken impression of a DW ad or something like that featuring Tommy Lee's kit. I thought he was playing like a red velvet looking pearl with white bass drum hoops. I like the color of this setup better. But now we know what the sizes of the drums are. Let's start by their provenance. These two guys, the 6-inch drums and the 8-inch drum and the 11, were initially part of a construction that was made strictly of cutoffs from Project 303. What was originally going to happen in all of that was they weren't even going to get this wrap finish. I was going to paint them basically kind of a dark navy blue with the inside stained kind of walnut brown and have walnut brown hoops to go around them. And right as I made that decision, all of a sudden that color of blue paint just disappeared forever. And it was so dark I couldn't really cover it up with anything. So I was like, all right, screw it, we'll just wrap the kit. The 12x14 floor tom was originally a Pacific floor tom that had given up its parts, probably to make my 13-inch Snom. The 16x18 was the only new shell that I had to buy on purpose for this kit in order to fill that gap, because I didn't want to go straight from the 14 to the 22. Although it could work like that. It sounds pretty badass. But I wanted to have another 18-inch floor tom, especially to go with this kit. I just wanted to have that option, because dragging a 22-inch bass tom around isn't always a convenient thing to do. And speaking of the bass tom, this was originally an 18x22-inch Pacific 8-lug bass drum. And I didn't even intend to build this one necessarily, but I ended up with 8 lugs left over after all the math was done for the rest of the kit. And just as a test, because of how I did the lugs on the bass drum, I used this 22-inch bass drum shell as kind of a test just to see how the bass drum lugs would mount and fit with the hoops and the heads and everything like that with what I had intended to do with them, and ended up doing. So in the process of that, I was like, you know what? This 22-inch tom-tom sounds pretty damn good. I think I'm going to add that to the kit lineup. So that's what I ended up doing there. And then the 24-inch bass drum is the kind of cherry to black fade bass drum that I think is in the background of one or two of my videos. That was bought as a Virgin PDP CX series MX series kick drum. And all I did was steal the hardware off of that to build my 24-inch Project 303 bass drum. And then this one, I just plugged in all the unnecessary holes, dressed it up in this nice red pearl here, and then got to work putting the hardware on there. So, let's go into a bit more detail on how I built these drums. Now, having 96 tom-tom lugs isn't entirely what you need to make a drum kit. You have to do something about the bass drum lugs, because either a bass drum lug is cast larger, or in the case of DW and Pacific, they like to take the same version of that lug and stand it up on an extra flange that goes around the base of the thing. This stems from a design back in the Camco days, where they would just take the tom-tom or snare lug and put it on a slightly larger plate that was designed to be just a little bit larger than the lug, also plated in chrome, and would serve to stand those tom-tom lugs off the bass drum so that they could save a little money not having to cast an extra part. Of course, anybody who knows drum history knows that George Way is responsible for the design of what we know today as a DW turret. That was originally the Aristocrat lug offered on his George Way series of drums, back before that outfit got sold to Camco. So even though when DW initially introduced these mini lugs on their flagship DW drums, they never made a separate bass drum lug. All they did was take this same machined part and stand it up off of the shell using kind of a rubberized plastic washer. Instead of doing that, because number one, I didn't know where the hell I was going to source those washers, and number two, I wanted something that threw back to that original George Way Camco design, and so I found chrome-plated fender washers that were just a little bit larger than the lug casting itself, and used those to stand off the bass drum lugs, thus giving me that overall DW style look, and also serving the function of raising the lug a bit off the shell and making it easier to run the hoops and the claw hooks as I did on this drum, and on the bass tom-tom as well. Now, of course, when I'm using a particular kind of hardware, I kind of want to stick to that company's best practices at any point that I can, just to basically follow the same rules and kind of achieve the overall form that I would expect to get from them. If I'm going to use a pile of DW mini lugs, then I'm also going to place the air vents where they typically would on a DW kit. I'm going to use DW floor tom legs and tom mounting brackets, and it all tends to blend well together. Like I said, when it came to the bass drum lugs, I changed how they were stood off the shell. I also used design series / concept series claw hooks because I felt that smaller, narrower design was a better fit for these tinier lugs. And of course, DW seems to agree with that sensibility since they're using similar hardware on the newest version of their mini lug approach, which is the design series itself. The one thing I didn't do genuine DW on this kit was the air vents as far as the specific vent itself. Number one, the DW air vents in chrome are $12 or $13 each. And at that point, I wasn't trying to go all out. This is kind of a spare parts build. But I also wanted to put in something that would set this thing apart from an actual DW drum, so that right away somebody would know it was a Fubi. That, oh, no way DW ever used that part in their drums. This is a fake. Just a little bit of insurance, because I don't want DW or anybody to feel like I'm trying to counterfeit a kit. Once again, I've decided to hot rod another one of my drum kits, and this is the result. And what a tasty, tasty result it is. Now, before anybody sets out to do an actually on my building this thing, let's do a quick rundown of what it took to get to this point where I could actually even make this kit. Actually. So first of all, let's clear one thing off the table right now. This project is no longer possible in the way that I did it. And the main reason for that is because that particular version of the Piccolo Tom is no longer in production. The one that has replaced it uses hardware from the design series. So if you were to even go through all of this rigmarole in order to get to a kit like this, all you'd be doing is making a bogus design series kit. The juice ain't worth the squeeze on that one in my eyes. Remember that I said that this is largely made out of cast-offs and spare parts. What I had to spend in order to have all of those cast-offs and spare parts is ranging somewhere in the $10,000 to $13,000 range in terms of just getting Project 303 off the table, buying all the Pacific drums that ended up being parts donors for that project, all of the DW hardware that I bought, and then the initial cost of those 16 Piccolo Toms, which was bubbling just under a couple of thousand after taxes. And it took 10 years to do all of that. So if you want to spend 10 years and approximately $13,000 to get a bogus DW kit, I mean, you can, but I don't think it's worth it. Like I said, this is about cleaning up spare parts, not trying to fake out DW. For what it cost me to get to this point, you could have DW make 2 very nice drum kits for you. Exactly how you want them done. You don't even have to do it my way. And the build quality is going to be better. The craftsmanship's going to be better. This, who knows? They could come flying apart in 5 years. Okay? I'm taking my chances because it's my gear. I would under no circumstances recommend that somebody could find a way to hack DW's price structure by buying cheap drums and trying to do all of that themselves. You'll spend more money than if you just had DW do it for you. So I just wanted to address that like, this is not like, here's how you get around it. No, there's no getting around. There's no free lunch, kiddo. Okay? This free drum kit cost me several $1,000s. Now, that said, there is one other problem that we should probably address because doubtless somebody has taken note of it by now. I also recycled the heads that originally came with that Pacific bass drum. So the original owner had put a bright white with a black DW logo on it front bass drum head. So obvious DW logo is obvious all over the front of my not DW kit. So I came up with a creative solution to the problem that should allay everyone's concerns and we can all move on smartly with our lives. But anyway, that's the new drum kit. I'm extremely pleased with it. I couldn't have asked for a better solution to what to do with my old Piccolo Tom-Toms. And it was a very enjoyable project, both to build and now to be able to have and to play on. So, I'm Mike Lindsay. Thanks for coming out. You don't want to repeat yourself when you're doing these details, otherwise you might repeat yourself. In the beginning, I was planning to use them more or less as is. But God damn. Always wait till after dinner before you shoot a video, kids. That way you can burp all the way through the thing.
Wasn't that metal? I'm some metal, guys.